So I'll introduce our first guest tonight, Nicolas. He was born in New Zealand and he completed a degree in chemical engineering, and he's worked in research and marketing, and also he's travelled the world, worked in London in corporate finance and in satellite communications until 1997, when he had a realisation. Now, Nicolas has established the healing and teaching practice, and he offers soul contract reading sessions and trainings that reveal a spiritual map of life. He also offers light body integration sessions and trainings, and I have personally experienced these, and we'll probably mention some of these tonight. Absolutely incredible. He runs Ascension workshops on manifesting heaven on earth, and he offers powerfully transformative individual sessions to help clients to manifest their divine life purpose. Nicolas, welcome. How are you this evening?
Thanks for having me on the show, Deborah. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Oh, really the pleasure's all ours, I can assure you. Listen, it's you have a really interesting background, and what I'd love you to do, first of all, for us, if you will, is just share some of that with the listeners so that they know a little bit about you, where you've come from.
Well, I had a very sort of technical, academic education. I sort of studied science and engineering, and then it was just sort of school to me at the time, and then I went out and into the wide world and got a bit of a shock when I saw what was really going on and how work was. And I was just sort of starting to explore life and starting to feel there had to be more to it than just this job and this career. And so I worked for a few years in New Zealand, but then I had itchy feet, and like many New Zealand young adults, I went travelling. I thought I'd go for a couple of years, but I ended up in London, and eventually, after travelling around the world, and I was working in satellite communications in a very exciting and cutting edge job, developing new services on satellite networks, and was working with the best people in the world. Actually, it was lovely, and. Then about 7 years into it, and I do believe the 7-year itch actually is real, I was on holiday and I was in Spain at Corte Romero, a spiritual retreat, and I woke up one morning and I looked at the sunrise over the Sierra Nevadas, and I had a strong feeling inside of like, I can't do this life, I can't do this job the way it is. I'm done with it. It was a very distinct shift. Whereas I've been really enthusiastic about what I've been doing, and I made my mind up that day that I had to leave that job, and I went back and I negotiated to become part-time, and I've been developing my spiritual practice in the weekends up to that stage. Mm-hmm. And I just knew I had to leave. I didn't quite know what I was going to do next. I hadn't realised I was going to take my sort of part-time hobby-type spiritual work into making a business or a living, and so I went travelling again about 10 years after I first left New Zealand, and I went to the Andes and the Himalayas, all the high consciousness places, and walked, and did lots of walks and trekking, and it was like I was going through some awakening initiation. And then that was for about 6 months, and it took me 6 months to 9 months to get, well, what's next? And then I realised I had to come back to England and set up my spiritual practice for real now. It wasn't just a hobby. I had to make a living out of this, which was quite scary, but I knew in my heart I couldn't go back to wearing a suit. I couldn't go back to doing the old thing. So I just had to have and trust that deep feeling inside. And I started the Centre for Conscious Ascension. It wasn't called that at that stage. It was called that a few years later, when I met up with Almira, who's my business partner, and we were also part of it. And we set that up to raise human consciousness on Earth, to raise people out of the old program ways that they were used to from birth, just to awaken that there's high possibilities, there's a chance of raising your consciousness, there's a chance of opening your heart and creating a better life for yourself and those around you. So that's sort of how I got started, really.
Wow. One thing that I'm really interested in is, like, when you actually started out on your spiritual journey, you mentioned about realising that you needed to leave work when you're in Spain. You just had that realisation. But has the spiritual life always been there, or did you have an awakening to it earlier than that? What was it that got you on the spiritual path, originally?
Way back in New Zealand in 1987, I did my first spiritual workshop where they taught us meditation and they taught us how to understand our issues and how we really reacted to different situations in life unconsciously. And that's when I sort of started to have my awakening, and I started meditating from that stage. And then what else did I do? I started reading Shirley MacLaine books, and then the big awakening actually happened back in 1990 when I was traveling in the States, and I had this very strong urge to go to these spiritual workshops called the Carousel of Growth in Arizona with my first major spiritual teacher, Frank Alpa. And it was there that I met my spiritual family. I walked into this hotel room in Phoenix, and all these people seemed really familiar, as if I'd been with them before, even though I'd never met them in this life. And that's how I got started, really. I learned so many things about myself, and discovered that I had so much in common with these people. I felt like I was at home for the first time. I guess you'd call it meeting your family, or your spiritual family, your lightworker family, and I'm still in contact with a lot of them 20 years later. So that was
it's a lovely feeling when you go into events, and it's just like bringing the family back together again. I experience that on a regular basis with people that I meet, and it's so lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like you can relax, go, I'm at home at last.
Yeah. And you mentioned, your partner Almira. Almira was a guest on this show a few weeks ago, and you got married, didn't you? And you've got a son who's going to be 10 soon.
In a couple of weeks, yeah, Gabriel, yeah.
Yeah. And I know that when I asked you about what was the lowest point in your life, you said that was separating from Almira. Could you just share some of those low points and how you actually got over that? Because I know a lot of people do go through split-ups, and how did you cope with it?
Well, we'd been together about 8 years, and then it became apparent that we were growing in different directions, and we felt at a soul level that the contract that had drawn us together was finished. We had come here to help each other awaken and work through the karmic issues of childhood that we all bring in. And at times it seems very hard when these issues are right in our face. And I had a very challenging time of the first year or 18 months after separating. But I saw in the gift of it was to see that the relationship had shown me all my unresolved childhood karmic issues, which were a context, I realized, for me to overcome. And out of that pain, I've managed to I've started claiming the gifts of deeper emotional connection and expression, empowerment, trusting myself. And we still talk about it today, that we both feel that we made the right decision, and we're still best friends now, because we've done this with consciousness, and we see that we had helped each other heal or face and heal the deep traumas of childhood, so then we could get on to our spiritual mission, our real purpose here. And without that strong experience, neither of us will be where we are today, being able to serve others, because only in having deeply moving experiences and transformative experiences can we actually relate to the experience of others, because we've been through a lot already. Yeah.
So I know when you have a relationship breakup, I've been through that as well, and it can be very, very painful. But it's like when you come out of it the other side, it's so liberating, isn't it? It's like it is about healing those wounds and realising that everything's happened for a reason.
Yeah, I see that now, 2 years on, and it's been a gift. I look at it as a gift, and there wouldn't have been anything else I would have done. I couldn't have come online to my sole purpose without having been through the furnace of that massive transformation, which is what we need to awaken, really, because when we come into this earthly reality, we go very much asleep, to forget that we're actually spirit embodied, having a human experience. And many people look at so-called hard stuff in life as a punishment, or I've done something karmically badly wrong, and they often turn away from it. I turned away from it for most of my life. I was 50 last year, and I spent most of the first 50 years turning away from the hard stuff. But I'd realized that turning into the hard stuff and feeling the pain, better to feel it briefly and work through the issue behind it, enable me to claim the gifts or the gold of my mission of service here. For example, I had a very disempowering childhood, but out of that, because I've had to face it, I've had to face feeling like a victim and feeling disempowered, I managed to come back into my power, which I thought I'd never do. And those issues were triggered by being in a relationship and having that mirror shown to me that this is what I need to look at.
Yeah.
So I see it as a great gift, and have done my best to embrace it. And as we embrace those gifts, we can deliver the service which will come out of that gift. Because people often ask me, what am I here to do? Well, I say, what's the biggest challenge in your life? Because that's where you'll find what you're here to deliver to the world.
That's a great way of phrasing it. Really, really powerful way of phrasing it. I'm going to remember that one and use it. Tonight we're here to talk about Ascension in 2012 in particular. So, Nicolas, what is your concept of Ascension?
Well, Ascension is the progressive raising of human consciousness. The way it all started really was a game of separation from spirit was started, whereas all that is, Great Spirit, call it God if you like, it's just a name, wanted to re-experience itself, wanted to expand its consciousness. So it took parts of itself and had them come into reality, this earthly reality, embody, and forget that they were part of all that is. And those parts are us. And so through the process of awakening in this life and facing the challenges we've just been talking about, we then re-experience ourselves as all that is by overcoming those challenges. For example, my challenge was to re-experience coming back into power, coming back into worthiness, coming back into trust. And so that's how all that is expands its consciousness, because the experience in the body, the emotional, visceral experience is much more intense than if you're out of a body in the high dimensions. And so this reality was created in this game of separation so that we could be as separate as possible in consciousness, to expand God's consciousness, all that is consciousness. But what's happened is that everything that can be experienced has been experienced. And so now what's happening is that we're returning back to the one, to unity consciousness, where we know ourselves as part of all that is. And so human consciousness is gradually rising faster and faster by the day to achieve that. And so Ascension is that process of returning home in consciousness to the one great soul that we all are.
And a lot of people have this fear about 2112. Why is it such a significant date?
Well, what's happened is that
Sorry, I said 2112 there, didn't I? I meant 2012.
Yeah, well, I think it's December the 21st, 2012. It's been picked as a date where in the Mayan astrology, where we make a transition out, of what we call polarity consciousness, where it's called good and evil consciousness, where we see ourselves as separate from each other. Okay, we don't see ourselves as one consciousness in many bodies. And that astrologically is the time when we shift out of what was called the male dominant perspective, where it's based on the ego mind dominating, command and control. And it's not man dominated, it's just that perspective which is held by both men and women. And when we make the transition in the Ascension process to a unity consciousness civilization, and that's where we are starting to let go functioning from the mind, and then surrendering and into our heart and opening our hearts. And if we've healed ourselves enough and let go the illusion of the separation programming we've been carrying by being in a game of separation, then as our heart opens, we can start to follow the feeling and flow of our spirit, the intuitive flow. And the idea is that the timing has been designed so by 2012 a significant amount of people, enough people have made that transition within themselves, because this is not a process being done to us, it's a process we are creating together or co-creating together, that enough of a seed is sown so that this will spread to as many people as possible, and we will be moving from a place of love and flow, intuition, and dancing and flowing and aligning with our spirit in each moment to create a different world altogether. So that's the significance of it. So it's actually nothing to be afraid of, and it's not like there's one sort of final end point. It's more like a continuum, this process.
Yeah, because I mean, you see a lot of these. Now. There's been these horror movies, haven't there? You know, where it shows like the end of the world, or you know, all these mad things going on, earthquakes and floods. Do you think we'll get any of that?
Well, it's just a missing. Well, everyone's probably familiar with the law of attraction. If you focus on that sort of thing happening, then you might get it. Okay, but what happens as we ascend is that our reality manifests faster and faster based on our thoughts and feelings. Okay, especially in our feelings in our heart, and it rearranges around what we call the pictures of reality we carry. And a picture of reality is what's programmed into us from the soul level. It's more than a belief. It's something deeply subconscious of how things are. Okay, many people may hold a picture of reality in the current financial situation that we're in deep trouble. Okay, other people hold the picture of reality that we're in deep deconstruction of the old civilization and creating a new civilization, and that this is this deconstruction, so we can reconstruct, is a great time to be had, and there's great change to be worked with. And so if you hold the picture of reality that there could be disaster, then there's a good chance you might manifest that in your reality. Okay, what happens is that if you focus on what you do want, there's a much more chance you'll actually get that. What's been going on is that up until a few years ago, generally what happened in the world was a product of what we call consensus reality, where everyone agreed at some subconscious level, all their pictures of reality were aligned and basically said, okay, the world is going to be a certain way. But what happens as we ascend is that starts to break down, and we each can start to create our own reality, like a bubble of reality around us on how our life is. So different people are going to have different experiences of 2012. So in order to play a game of separation, we need what we call the forces of darkness. And it's not to be scared of, forces of condensation. For light to forget who it is, you must have an opposing force to keep it at a certain level of limited consciousness. And so light presses against dark. Dark gradually dissolves. And what happens is that eventually dark turns back into light, because that's what it was in the first place. So the scary movies and that sort of stuff is just slowing us down so we don't go too quick, because the idea is to gradually overcome them and transform them into light, so that we can have that gradual experience of getting back to unity consciousness, where we feel and know that we are one with everything.
So that's interesting. I never looked at it like that before, where So could you say then that the negative thoughts that people have are maybe the dark forces which are slowing down their own personal ascension process?
Well, we all carry emotional separation programmed into us so we go to sleep. And so the outer reality is just a reflection of our inner reality. And the darkness is not to be made the enemy. It's not to be said as judged as bad or anything like that, because that just makes it stronger. It's just the way this game of separation works. Okay, it's just the way it's structured so we can have that experience of moving back to source. And that's all it is, actually. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that. It's just more like a timing mechanism so we can have this experience.
Fascinating stuff. We're going to be talking more about this in the second part of the show. Welcome back to Masterypath Connections. This is Deborah Brown, and tonight I'm talking with Nicolas David Ngan from the Centre for Conscious Ascension, and we're talking about Ascension and 2012. Welcome back, Nicolas.
Hi, Deborah. It's great to be back.
Great. While we've been talking, actually, we had a question that came through yesterday from someone who was going to listen in yesterday, somebody called Sarah. And she's got a question which I think is really relevant to bring in now, because we've just been talking about 2012. And so if you don't mind, I'll ask you this rather than at 10 o'clock, because it is relevant. And what Sarah wants to know is, how can we prepare for 2012 in all aspects? And she's referring to physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and sexually.
That's a big question. Let's start with that. Let's start emotionally with that, because that's usually the biggest challenge people face. So, as I was saying in the first part, the soul lays down specific emotional karmic challenges or patterns we're here to work through. So what these do, these low frequency patterns, they keep our frequency down, they keep our consciousness down. So the most important thing to do, I wouldn't say just prepare for 2012, I'd say it's something to do continuously, because 2012 is just a dead, it's just a trend, actually, is to face and address the tough emotional issues and heal them, integrate them and claim the gifts from them. And it's not about only looking at all the things which we think are wrong. I used to do that for a very long time as a healer within myself. It's about still staying focused on where we feel we want to go in that moment in our life, and it's sort of getting to soul purpose or life purpose, soul destiny. It's important to keep focused on where we want to go, and as we start to follow our heart progressively better and better, as we clear more of our emotional issues, our purpose gets clearer. And so as we raise our consciousness in doing that, different layers of our emotional karmic patterns are going to rise up. Then it's about going and bringing consciousness to those, feeling them, clearing them with whatever tools you use. I use a thing called Divine Healing Master Key that Almera developed with a couple of other experienced healers. She uses higher self to basically deprogram us and clear those programs. And as that program clears, our consciousness rises. And as it rises, we get more aligned with our spirit, and so the journey continues. So that's one component of the ascension process. And that's an ongoing process, but it's important to give plenty of time to focusing on the good stuff where we want to go.
So let me just recap on that one first of all. So emotionally, it's important to keep focused, and then as we're following our heart, different levels of programming arise, and what we do then is deal with those programs as they come up by experiencing them, allowing them to surface, and what is there anything practical that people can do?
Well, practically, it's about, if something comes up, it's about moving towards the negative emotion and feeling, about bringing consciousness to it, which is about feeling all aspects of it, and then using whatever healing tools you have that work for you to actually clear it. And then that'll be gone, and you realize that was just something which was temporarily there, and it actually wasn't you at all. It was just something the ego was holding on to. So it's practically about owning it, healing it, then refocusing on back where you feel you want to go in your life at that time. That's the practical application of it.
Right.
When we get into avoidance of things, it just lowers our frequency and makes our life more difficult and more challenging. So it's better to face it and get on with it, which is not as easy. It's more easily said than done, speaking from personal experience.
Yeah, that's great. So you feel it, you own it, and then you deal with it.
Yeah, or have someone facilitate you to do that, or learn some self-healing techniques to do that, so you can do it on yourself.
Okay, so that's emotionally. So what about the next one, mentally?
Well, mentally, it's really helpful to know, well, what am I here to do? Why am I here? Why am I in a body? Why have I incarnated? And so it's important to understand what we call the spiritual map of life, which comes from the soul contract reading work, which I think Mariah has presented on this show previously.
Yeah.
The soul lays down a very specifically chosen program of contextual experience for us to go through, so we can bring very specific gifts online, as I was talking about earlier. It's important to have that map. Like, we wouldn't want to go from London to Manchester without a map. We get lost. And so it's the same with life. Most people initially are very lost in life because they don't have that map. So understanding that map is very important, because when we understand where the soul wants to go and we align with that, what happens then is that life flows much more easily, because we're not working against the flow of our spirit. And because a lot of people don't have that map, life is challenging, or life is hard, as they say, because of that, because they're not in alignment with their true purpose. So that's a very important part as well, because in knowing what your challenges are, knowing what your abilities are to overcome that, or your talents, and knowing the goals the soul wants to achieve, both physically and spiritually, and especially soul destiny or life purpose, that means you can spend most of your time doing the 10% of things that matter in life and forget the other 90% that the mind thinks you should do, which actually aren't important. And as you align with the flow of your spirit, then life will flow in a more conscious way, and then life will be more fulfilling and satisfying as a result, and you'll have a much better chance of getting to the gift of service that you're here to bring to the world.
Can I just ask you about that before we go on to the next bit? You mentioned about the gift of service. Do you think everybody has that gift? Do you think that's, in everybody's soul contract, or just some people?
That's the whole point in coming. That's why we've come. That's why we've embodied. We've come here to deliver whatever we're most passionate about. That comes from our soul. Whatever our dreams are, even if they seem unrealistic initially, that's deeply programmed into us from the soul, and that's what it really wants to bring out into the world. And so that's why people who are very inspired and take that inspiration out into the world and form businesses with that, or work in jobs which allow them to do that, that's why they get a lot of fulfillment from that, because they're delivering their gift. And we each have unique gifts, unique strengths to contribute to this ascension process, to this co-creative process I've been talking about. And as we open our hearts and connect with like-minded people, we'll find that we'll form our team, because we're not here to do it all by ourselves. We're actually here to synergize and co-create with very specific people and bringing our mission online. And the more we align with our mission, the more likely those people are going to turn up, and they'll provide complementary strengths and abilities to help us in our mission, and we'll help them in theirs. And this is what co-creating Ascension is all about.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So going back to Sarah's question, what about physically? What can we do physically?
Well, we're in dense physical bodies, and so because we're rising in frequency, eventually in the ascension process we will turn to beings of light. For those of you who've seen the movie Cocoon, there are beings of light in there, and that's what we actually look like when we're not in a body. And so it's important to raise the frequency of the body as possible through really looking after it, really detoxing ourselves, eating organic, living in balance, just maximizing its high frequency as much as possible, because that allows much more consciousness to come into the cells from our higher self. because what's happening is that our DNA is covered in a lot of dense thought forms to lock us down in consciousness. So by detoxing, that starts to release those thought forms, and that actually allows consciousness or light to come in. Many of the Vedic practices are designed to actually flush out that those toxins, so consciousness can come in. And so that as we raise the frequency of the body, that means through emotional clearing and physical clearing, that means more of our divinity, more of our spirit can come in and express itself through our human consciousness.
So you do that through your diets, through like
Diet,
not drinking alcohol, for example.
Yep.
And drugs, and maybe having what about vegetarian versus meat eating? Does that make a difference?
Well, my understanding is that we were originally meat eaters, and then as we developed agriculture, then different blood types evolved, which preferred to be more vegetarian. Meat is a denser frequency, but some blood types need to have meat. But the lighter the food, and the higher frequency of the food, and the more conscious the food is being prepared, the higher, and if that goes into us, then the higher frequency that we'll get to. So I wouldn't say, being a vegetarian is critical to this, because some people, it's not possible for them to do that. But it suits other people fine, and that's just what they need to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so what about the next area, which is put spiritually? Well,
to keep raising your frequency, it's about the other part of this process is to embody high consciousness, to embody more of your soul, more of your higher self into the physical body, and express itself, express its motion here through the human consciousness. And that can happen through the physical and emotional clearing, but also we put in different energetic structures and programs and beings into our energy system to put ourselves to sleep. Anything to raise consciousness, to connection to spirit will be very, very helpful. We use some work called light body expression work. And what that does is that it's not healing, it's more awakening. And that moves the energetic structures which we carry in our heads and our body and our fields to actually open up the channels to our spirit to embody and express through us. You've heard already.
Yeah, I mean, I experienced this morning. I had a 2-hour session with you this morning, and it was phenomenal. And you're removing all sorts of devices from my body. Is it my astral body, my etheric body? What body is it that you were doing that from?
It was from a lot of different bodies. It was a mixture of all of them, actually, because it flowed through different parts of your energy system.
Yeah, and it was an incredible experience because, I could physically feel shifts happening as you were doing this. And we were doing this not on a one-by-one, face-to-face. It was actually over Skype, wasn't it? So this is something that can be done over a long distance.
Well, there's no time and space. It's just a perceptual thing. That's the reason this works. Remote work, energetic work, actually works like that. And so what we were doing for you is removing the energetic structures that had created. A lot of it's based on what happened in past lives. That created the illusion, created the karmic patterning that we carry. And as we remove them, that patterning breaks free. And so it enables us to embody more light, more consciousness through us to express. And so it's an accelerated awakening process. And this sort of work is being brought in because everything that can be experienced by all that is has been experienced. So it's all about wrapping up this game of separation, but taking the memory of what it was like to be this separate unity from spirit, from all that is, taking that memory back gradually, progressively, so then we have that experience in in what we call a group mind or group consciousness of all that is.
Yeah. And does this then help? Actually, I'll ask you that question next, because Sarah's just got one more thing on her list, and this is, how can we prepare for 2112? And the other area was sexually.
Well, it's only when we're actually in a physical body that we have the male-female polarity. And that's sort of symbolic of the masculine and feminine aspects of God. And when we, as souls, we actually choose both types of bodies over time through the different incarnations. And there's descendants of Tantra, which always happens at the end of a game of separation when human consciousness is rising. And it's not about kinky sex or the other connotations that go with it. It's actually a pathway to enlightenment, pathway to awakening. I've done a lot of I did a lot of tantric practice for a very long time, and in the connection at a soul level in the tantric practice, what happens is that the male-female fully reconnect, and that actually starts to end duality. It starts to end a duality within us, so that we can actually be at one again. So that sort of practice, for those who are open to it, is a very fast pathway to enlightenment, to consciousness raising. So it's about bringing the sacredness back into that very open, loving expression. That
was an absolutely fabulous question, Sarah. I'd like to thank you for sending that in, because you've been able to cover some great information there, Nicolas. Is there anything else that you want to add to this before we move on to the next bit?
I think the main thing... the main thing to look at, really, the main concept I'd like to get over now is that many of us, me included, felt for a long time that life was just done to me. Things just happened to me and I had to deal with it, that I had no power to change my reality. And so what's happening is the frequency of Earth rises and human consciousness rises, manifestations happening a lot faster. And it's about, I encourage everyone to start to move to a place where they're creating their reality in each moment, and that by healing themselves and embodying high consciousness and following the map of their life, however they want to access that, if they start to follow that, then what starts to happen is that the gifts start to emerge, and as our gifts of service emerge and we align with our spirit, we then start to create this change at a more conscious level around us. So the more we are aligned and following spirit without hesitation in the now moment, not worrying about the future, not worrying about what's happened in the past, that enables us to navigate this tremendous time of change with much more grace and ease, because we don't know what has to happen next. We just got to follow what feels right. And then the resources and people and opportunities will turn up, and things will just happen. And as we start to see that and start to trust more, it becomes more like a dance of joy, a real flow for us and for those around us, where we're not trying to work it all out and know what's going to happen in 5-10 weeks' time. We just do what's next. And so the part that people can play about doing all the things we just talked about based on Sarah's questions, and so the awakening to who you actually are can happen much more easily. And as you start to trust that awakening more, then it becomes even more joyful, because the only thing that stops the good things we want in life coming back is our mind's doubt that it won't come. It was always there. And it's taken me many years to grasp that concept, but I've seen that in action more recently, that it was only my lack of trust in something happening that prevented something there. But as soon as I started to trust, it just turned up.
Yeah. It's like looking like the world is a mirror to us, isn't it? And when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, the things that are showing up for us, the patterns that keep repeating, the signals to us that we need to clear this stuff up. Would you agree?
Well, yes, it is. Life provides opportunities in each moment to work on our issues. It's not just about looking at those issues only, feeling that we have to heal and fix and save ourselves all the time, or others, which I did for many years. It's about moving beyond that to, as I said earlier, to focusing on, okay, what vision do I have of this new civilization? It's, the other terms used, creating heaven on earth, or co-creating heaven on earth, and it's not just something Jesus said in the Bible. It's heaven on earth is that unity consciousness civilization. It's a product of all the things we've been talking about for the past hour. And that's what we actually have come here to do. We've come here to co-create that with each other, with like-minded souls, those who are open to that journey of following and living from the heart and following the Spirit, trusting each moment what the right thing is to do. And so that's how this new civilization is to be born, out of the ashes of what is quite clearly falling apart around us. And we can't rescue what's falling apart around us because its consciousness is so low, there's nothing you can do about it. It's about bringing in a new consciousness and rebuilding something which is going to work for us, which is going to be resonant with our hearts. That's actually why we've all come.
But how do we actually create or access this unity consciousness within ourselves?
By gradually following the process we've just talked about, detoxing ourselves, finding out what our true purpose is, our soul purpose or destiny, working on just identifying more clearly what our karmic issues are, because our gifts will come out of that, getting clear what our goals are from our spirit, clearing all the emotional separation patterns around that. And as we reach what I call a threshold of integration, we get clear enough, our heart starts to open, and then we feel within ourselves. Women do this much more easily than men. We can feel what is right, because when the right thing comes, our spirit will communicate through our bodily feeling and emotion. It may talk to us, but generally it's more through feeling. Our heart opens when the right thing, we come across something which is the right thing to do, and it will close if it's not the right thing. And if we do the right thing, life will expand and flow easily. If we go with our mind and let it dominate, which it has for many thousands of years, what will happen then is that it gets difficult and challenging, and we have to work hard at it, and it's like, it's not much fun, it's not heaven anymore. And as we embody high consciousness, that pushes out more of the emotional patterning, breaks down more of the mental control and of the ego. And so gradually we move from a spirit heart place progressively more and more each day. And as we do that, that's how we create unity consciousness, where we start to feel that everyone around us, feel and know that everyone around us is me. They're showing me part of me. They are me. And that's how we start to live and co-create heaven on earth. Because we are actually all just the creator embodied who forgot who we were. That's what we call it co-creation. That's literally what is happening. It's then starting to believe that actually is the case. It's taken me a long time to get to the point of even considering that myself, because I came in variously. And then through all those different processes which open the heart, as we flow with that, then we co-create a place which hasn't existed here for a very long time.
And of course, when we have that unity consciousness, we're getting back to unconditional love.
Yes.
Having no judgment, just loving people for who they are, the beautiful souls, no matter what they've done, or it's just been able to open our hearts to everybody on the planet, isn't it? And connect with the animals, the trees, nature.
Yes, it's about, we have that concept mentally, a lot of us, especially men, but it's about having it, just being with someone, accepting them exactly as they are. Even all the things, I do a lot of healing for a living. accepting all the parts of someone as part of our wholeness. Nothing within us or anyone else is separate from spirit. It's just all part of the one great soul. And it's about getting to the point where our heart automatically just opens to that and accepts it. Because when we accept that unconditionally, then it can transform, because it's only our judgment and rejection of something that holds it in place and makes it harder for it to transform back to love, back to light, back to higher consciousness.
Yeah. Nicolas, I'm absolutely loving talking to you. Welcome back to Mind, Body, Spirit Radio, and tonight this is Deborah Bryan on Masterypath Connections talking with Nicolas David Ngan from the Centre for Conscious Ascension. Now, Nicolas, your website is really comprehensive. You've got loads and loads of information on there and resources that people can look at. Could you just remind us what is the what is the website address for anybody who's listening in that wants to check it out?
Yeah, it's www.center with an ER for FOR conscious ascension.net. It's very specifically designed that way because it transmits unity consciousness and connects like-minded people to us. It was designed to attract our team, the people the souls that we were contracted to work with, to co-create heaven on earth. And the whole transmission of it is built that way, to remind people who they are and to help them awaken.
Right, lovely. We'll mention that again at the end, and so people know how to get hold of you. I've got a couple of questions that have come in. First of all, if we can take this one, how do we create heaven on earth?
Well, it's a sort of product of everything we've just talked about already. It's about getting clear enough emotionally, physically, and embodying enough of our spirit so that we can actually feel what we call the spiritual signature, that feeling of rightness, of expansion in our heart. And then as we get through that threshold of what I call soul integration, what then starts to happen is that the soul starts to manifest what we call divine purpose. All right, well, you all have a divine purpose, which is ultimately a gift of service, but it's usually beyond what we initially believe it is, because we wouldn't be able to cope with it probably at a human ego level. So at a certain time, that purpose starts to activate, and the resources start to turn up, and people start to turn up, because within you, you're projecting it out to the world and manifesting it from within you. And this relates to what I said before. You start to step outside the consensus reality of what everyone else believes in, and you start to create your own hologram, your own local bubble of reality, and that starts to affect those around you. And within that divine purpose is a vision of heaven on earth for you. And as you start to bring that vision out, because you're clear enough and you start to manifest it, because when your heart is open, it's much easier to manifest, because the heart is 55 times more powerful than the mind in terms of manifestation. You start to bring that vision forward. So having a clear vision of how you deliver your gift is very important. And so working on that is very, very, it's critical to manifesting your part of heaven on earth. That's actually how you do that. And that's the part that many light workers, the souls who are here to serve, who have this deep desire to serve in humanity selflessly, that's what many of them are starting to get to now. I see them every day coming along saying, I'm ready, Nicolas. I'm ready to deliver my service, and I'll do whatever it takes to get there. I've done this so many lifetimes, they know that at a soul level, but now's the chance to really go for it. So that's actually how we create heaven on earth.
You mentioned something there about, you said when you're clear enough, your heart starts to open, and then you start to attract and, draw things to yourself. When you say when you're clear enough, do you mean clear enough on what your purpose is, or do you mean clear enough as in clearing your emotional and, the rest of your baggage?
The latter. Being clear enough emotionally is the key, so that the ego programs aren't sabotaging you, aren't holding you back. Okay, that's actually what I mean by clarity, because then the purpose, the vision will emerge anyway, because it's already within you. Okay, but it's just the emotional baggage which was preventing you accessing it. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So when you've cleared yourself emotionally and relating back to Sarah's question, you've dealt with all that other stuff as well on all different levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Even though you may not have a clear vision of what your purpose is, it will emerge naturally as a result of you opening your heart. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it'll gradually emerge. One way of finding it is to write down, well, what are your different objectives in life, in all the different areas like health and relationships and career and lifestyle, and then look at all the goals there and connect with the feeling that it would engender to achieve those goals, and that will start to give you an idea of what your vision is. Because deep down, the soul wants to go for a very high consciousness feeling, and it's going to create that through specific goals in life. And what happens with light workers and service souls initially is that we serve ourselves initially as we start to awaken. We do things because we want to earn a living, or it's a little more selfish initially because that's the way the ego is built. It's quite self-indulgent initially. Then after a while we move from that to serving others, and then after that we move to total service to humanity. And as that starts to happen, that's when we move to the unconditionally loving, accepting part of ourselves. That's when we move to what we call unity consciousness. That's when we move to what we call a fifth dimensional perspective. And the fifth dimension is 2 octaves above the third dimension, or what's left of it that we're in. And that's where we are in unity consciousness. Okay, that's where we came from before we came here, many of us.
Well, that's a great way of describing it. Thank you, Nicolas. I have another question here. And Paul wants to know, what happens to people who know nothing of this stuff? Won't they ascend?
Well, there are many different views on what's going to happen here. The vast majority of souls who came to Earth came here to be completely asleep. These are the people Paul refers to who know nothing of the stuff. They chose that deliberately so that they could anchor this game of separation. And then you have the light workers, the service souls, which is probably 2 to 5% of the population, more conscious souls who've been through these games of separation on other planets, many other lifetimes, on those other planets and on here. And we come here as like a catalyst. We come here as an infusion of higher consciousness to trigger everyone else to awaken. Some people may have heard of the 100th monkey syndrome, where they discovered that the monkeys which lived on the different islands in Japan, which were physically separate by all that water, some monkeys learned how to wash potatoes in the water, and suddenly they all learned how to do it on all the different islands. And so they worked out that there must be some morphogenetic field, there must be some communication between that same species. And so this is a bit like what's happening here on Earth. If enough people get conscious enough through the infusion of high consciousness, it's actually only a square root of 1%, which is only about 8,000 people, which is a critical level of consciousness, then everyone else awakens. It's happening on Earth because Almira did a search on Google AdWords the other day, and we discovered that Ascension in England alone is searched for 40,000 times a month. One of the high, it's at a very high level, more so than even spiritual healing. So it's saying that this concept, this idea of what we've been talking about in this interview is spreading into mass consciousness out there in the world. And so our job is to maximize our consciousness, our service, and then everyone else will start to awaken. Okay? Because the idea is to ascend as many people as possible, as consciously as possible. Because what happens in the past is that many people transition to the higher dimensions and they lose memory completely, so they don't remember what it was like to be in a body. But the idea is to have as many people as possible who can cope with it, to actually have full memory what it was like to be in a body, to be in this much density, and then to be in a body of light and remember that, because that's actually what you call immortality. It's having continuous memory.
Oh.
So that's the whole idea of it. It's not about having a continuous body, it's about having the memory, the maintaining your consciousness through the transition, and that's the tricky phase. And that's why this game of separation is ascending and going back to light at a certain pace in order to maximize the number of people who can do that. Some people may still transition unconsciously because their consciousness has not evolved enough, or they haven't chosen to rise enough in consciousness to be able to cope, and so it may be too difficult for them. So some people believe that what will happen is that you have what's called a parallel split. I'll explain what that means. Whenever we choose to follow spirit, go with the flow of the spiritual signature, we go a certain way. If part of us decides to not follow spirit, we get what's called a parallel split. Now, this is a abstract concept, really, in that a parallel reality splits off in the same space, where in one reality we followed spirit, in one reality we didn't. And from the higher dimensions, this just allows us, our soul, to have the experience of both realities, following spirit and not following spirit. And so what may happen is that a big parallel reality may break off, where those who are not ready to ascend just yet may go into that reality, and those who are will go into the other reality. But no one really knows what will finally happen here, because we're making it up in the moment, each of us. It's not all pre-planned. There's a general direction we're going, but when we're asleep, a lot of light workers may find that they're quite tired in the mornings because they've been in high-dimensional meetings trying to work out, okay, what are we going to do next with this whole process? And we are agreeing and working out what happens. So as many people will move forward as possible, Paul, and to maximize their consciousness to make this transition. But how that will finally happen, no one actually knows.
That's really interesting. Thank you for that, and thank you for the question, Paul. I've got another question here from Shelley Palmer in York, and she wants to say hi to you first off and thank you for all that you do for all. And the question is, do you still do Taste of Soul contract readings? Because you did one for over a year ago and it was so helpful to her, and now that I'm helping many others on their journey, I know it will be helpful to them also. At the moment I'm not. But I'm thinking of developing some software on the web, which may be able to do that in the future. That's as far as I've got with it, because I wasn't able to keep up with the demand of doing that. Okay. So not at the moment, Shelley, but watch this space. Got another question here for you, Nicolas. On your website, you refer to walk-ins, about, you and Almira are walk-ins. Can you explain what a walk-in is, please? A walk-in is a very specific situation where a high frequency soul changes places with a host soul who's already embodied to take over the lifetime. And this is not invasion of the body snatchers or anything like that. It's more where the first soul grows the body from the point of conception, and it creates the life, personality, the relationships, and then at a very specific time and place to get the right astrological configuration, it leaves the body by withdrawing its energy from all the cells and takes it to the pranic tube, and it leads to the crown chakra. It's just like when we die in this reality, or we don't die actually, really, and then a minute of a second later, the second soul comes in at a very specific time, comes in the pranic tube, and its energy through all cells, and basically takes over the lifetime and builds on that lifetime to carry out its mission of service. Now, the reason that happens is because if that high consciousness soul came in at the point of conception, the frequency difference between it and the mother will be too great, so therefore the mother probably would have miscarried. So it's a way of getting high consciousness beings into bodies without having to grow it from scratch, basically. But then the walk-in soul, its contract with the first soul was to clear all the karma in the body that the first soul brought in. So it has to clear all those karmic patterns, deal with human life so it
all the challenging stuff, so it knows what it's like here, so it can relate to people. And once it reaches what we call the threshold of walk and integration, which is pretty much similar to soul integration, except it's more challenging because it's trying to clear the stuff, the karmic stuff in the body much faster to get on with its mission, then its vision and its purpose comes online. And so that happened to both Almira and I, because we came here to do this work, to do this ascension work, to share that, to ascend this planet, and to create heaven on earth, really, and help others do that with us.
So how does somebody know whether they're a walking soul or not?
Well, there's a feeling that, well, my feeling was that my family, they weren't my family. Who are these people? Because I found it difficult to relate to them. And I looked at the reality, and I remember, it might happen when I was in about 11. And when I was a teenager, I wondered why no one was telling the truth. No one was telling the truth. They were sort of living a lie in their life, I thought. And I started going around telling the truth and got myself into lots of trouble. But because on the higher dimensions, there is only truth, there are visions. And so I was coming from that perspective. But I soon learned that it wasn't a good idea, and I had to adapt to that. There can be allergic symptoms because the body's consciousness, we have a devic consciousness within us that helps us grow to perfection, just like plants have devas. It can feel like it's died when the first soul leaves. Okay, and when the second soul comes into the body, it says, well, who are you? And it tries to push it out, which can lead to allergies, autoimmune diseases. I had hay fever from the time I walked in because my soul and my body weren't working together too well. The walking souls tend to be much more sensitive because they're running at a higher frequency. And it's not saying they're better than anyone else. It's just that they've just had more experience in running at a higher consciousness to try and raise everyone else's consciousness. So there's a whole host of sort of side effects from that, from bringing high consciousness into a body. So it's actually quite a tricky process to integrate that soul into the human personality, because it will transform that personality, and it will then use that expanded consciousness to bring its service to the world.
Yeah. If somebody thinks that they are walking and they need support, what's the best process for them to go through?
Well, each walk-in has its own unique set of symptoms. So we sit down with people and we do an evaluation to find out, what's actually gone on, when it occurred. Usually occurs because it's a shock emotionally or physically to someone. Either they had people in severe storms and planes, people who've had car crashes, sporting injuries, that sort of thing. We evaluate what's actually gone on, introduce the concept as it's just a model for raising consciousness. We basically counsel people, we help them integrate with the light body integration work, we help them clear their body with the divine healing, and we give them a soul contract reading to work out, well, what is the purpose here? We give them the map, because a walking soul is usually very driven, and they have this urge, I've got to get to my mission. It's a really strong urge within them, because that's why they came, and they'll do whatever it takes to find that and to clear themselves, and they'll look for whatever tools are there. And if they're organised, they've got support there, they've got the tools, got people to help them to actually do that. And that's one of our sort of specialties, in helping walk-ins integrate and come online, basically.
And you run courses as well. I know some of our previous guests on Masterypath Connections have trained with you. I know there's Aquila and Mariah. Can you just tell us a little bit about the courses that you run, and who were those open to?
Well, we run 3 primary practitioner courses. We teach people how to become soul contract readers. I think there's a course on in April, so that they can actually help with the truth of their, so they can understand what their karmic issues are, make recommendations on how to overcome those issues, how to basically get to their soul purpose. Mary teaches Divine Healing Master Key. There's a workshop on in a few months' time, and that's where you're taught how to access the higher self, and what the other healers have done. And I've mapped out all the programs you can have here on Earth, and through the process of asking you shall receive, the higher self can then basically dissolve those programs very rapidly, and so you can get back to the oneness that you are. It's a very powerful process. It was key to my integration of my walk in soul. And then we teach light body integration, which is we teach practitioners in that as well for the embodiment and expression of someone's divinity, to awaken them out of the illusion of the karmic game. And so those are the three primary tools we use for awakening people, workshop-wise. And I'm teaching an Ascension workshop from what we've just talked about in June, and our Merit teaches Tantra workshops. There's one at the end of February. She also teaches workshops for empowering women, workshops on abundance, and one for integrating walk-ins. So she teaches a whole range of them, which are all on the website.
So there's a lot of support then for people who are on this journey, who want to take it further. So it might be something for Shelley to think of. Shelley, if you're still listening and you've got lots of people that you think you could help about soul contract readings, you want to, nip down to, is it Surrey you hold your courses, Nicolas?
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe consider that if that's something that resonates with you. Nicolas, what else would you like to share with us? What I'd like to ask you is, if you were to give one key message to people to take away, what would it be?
It's to open your heart through healing, and just so you can follow your spirit without hesitation, because that's how you'll start to live heaven on earth, and that's how you'll co-create a better world for all of us. And if we all did that, the change will be amazing. That's my one message.
And you mentioned something there. You said open your heart through healing, like without hesitation, right? So without hesitation, does that mean that you need to completely surrender to the process?
Surrendering to the following your spirit without hesitation is in the moment doing what feels right deep in your heart, because that will lead you on the right path for you. Okay? It's not thinking about it too much, because the mind always wants to keep us in the past, wants to keep us safe, but that keeps us miserable a lot of the time, speaking from experience. So it's guiding us onto the right action, the right thing said at the right moment, engaging with the right people with our work. So that's what following spirit without hesitation is about, because our mind cannot encompass the consciousness of what spirit can do. And so by following spirit, which has the bigger picture, often we'll follow a very winding, twisted path, which is not clear, but if we do follow it, it all works out in the end. And that requires us to trust, because the only fear that we carry is in our ego mind, and there's nothing outside us to be scared of, because it is all one great soul. So how can we be scared of ourselves? The only thing we can be scared of are the things we fear, which we will manifest if we keep focusing on them. And it's about a progressive realization or raising consciousness of all things that we're focusing on that we don't want, because they keep turning out, and focusing on what we do want. And that happens every day for me. I realize, I've been focusing on that, and actually I want something which is over there. And as we start to peel away all those things that we don't want, that we're focusing on, then heaven starts to happen.
Yeah, and we can then start to just live in joy and bliss in every waking moment, can't we?
Well, that's the idea. And it's a much more powerful, sparkly and accelerating process doing it in a physical body, because you can't have the same level of experience of range of emotion out when you're not in a body. This is why we do it this way.
And we are actually so lucky to be here on planet Earth at this moment in time, aren't we? I bet there's millions of souls up there who would give anything to change places with us. And I don't think that we always fully appreciate that. Yeah, is there anything you want to say about that, Nicolas?
I wake up in the morning now, and I say to God, I'm just grateful to be able to wake up again in a body, as I've started to realize that the precious gift of life and of embodiment. Because I used to didn't like waking up a long time ago when I was still working through some of the deeper issues. And it's about, I enjoy just being in the moment, feeling, well, what next? What do I do now? And as I start to trust that, the next thing turns up, new opportunities turn up. It's because I've just open to it, just allowing it to manifest. But it's very important. I've learned also to have very clear, consistent vision once you've got to it, and gradually refine that vision, because the more time and focus you put on that vision of how heaven on earth is for you, okay, the more likely it's going to turn up sooner rather than later. And not to be distracted by all the issues which come up on the way. In Neil Donald Walsh's book, Happier Than God, he talks about the law of opposites. And so whenever you start to focus on what you do want, what you don't want is going to turn up first. And the reason for that is that you have to have a context to create what you do want. Because if you didn't have the context, you wouldn't value what you really wanted. And so many people misinterpret that and feel like, oh, I'm not meant to go there. That's not the place I'm meant to be. And so they turn away from the doorway, which was actually open to the gift or the manifestation they were after at the deepest soul level. So I've learned to, when the opposite stuff really turns up, it means I'm really close. So I keep going, and then it always turns up. Sometimes the timing is not what my mind would like, but actually it does turn up. And so that's actually very important to understand how the reality works, that it can all be there. You've just got to stay focused on it and know how the universe actually works. Because all it's trying to do is show you, give you that contrast. So when the good experience does come, if you want to call it a good experience, when the desired experience comes, you really value that because it's taken you some effort to actually get there.
Yeah. That's beautiful, thank you. If people want to connect with you, Nicolas, what's the best way of doing that?
They can connect through the website. My email is Nicolas, that's Nicolas, number 1, number 2, at center with an ER for FOR conscious ascension.net, which is also the website address. That's the easiest way.
Yeah, you've got a Facebook site as well, don't you, for your group?
Yeah, Nicolas without an H David.Ngan, spelled Ngan. That's my Facebook site, and I pretty much put on there all the things that I'm up to, so people get a feel for what we do.
It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you tonight. Thank you so much for the work that you've been doing with me. It's been extremely powerful. I do highly recommend it to anybody who's wanting to accelerate the spiritual path. Can I just ask you on that point, Nicolas, are you able to help everybody who comes to you, or are there certain cases that you don't take on?
It depends on where someone is on their path. Most of the time we can help people, but sometimes people need more specialist help in certain areas, and we'd recommend them to other people. So most of the people who come to us are on the path, who wish to awaken to their purpose, who wish to do all the things we just talked about, embody high consciousness, clear their issues, open their heart, and also to help others as well. We have a lot of focus on teaching practitioners to get this work out there further in the world.
Yeah, that's really important, isn't it? Because it's like you were saying earlier, that we need a team around us. We can't do everything ourselves.
well, we're not meant to do it by ourselves, even though we're sort of programmed to do it that way. We're much more powerful as a team. New people are always turning up all the time, and it's exciting.
And it's much more fun working with other people as well, isn't it?
Well, it is. It is, yeah. It is. We sort of start off by ourselves, and then actually the co-creative process is really exhilarating and exciting and very fulfilling, actually. That's what I find.
Yeah, I love it.
I like delivering my strengths to helping others a lot. So.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us this evening, for helping people have an understanding of Ascension and 2012 and know that there's nothing to fear there. It's been absolutely brilliant talking to you.